Let's see. We got Harry. He's going to turn on his camera, and then we'll be ready to go.
Happy Friday, Damon.
Hey, how's it going? All right, Harry. So I'm going to get us live on LinkedIn here, and then we'll get started. So I'm letting the video play in the background on LinkedIn while we're doing this. Hello, everyone. Welcome once again to the Manufacturing Ecommerce Success Series. I'm one of your hosts, Damon Postolka, and your other co-host, Curt Anderson. We've got another special guest here today to talk about an important subject for manufacturers that are interested in e-commerce. So, Curt Anderson, take it away, my friend. I'll be monitoring the chat on LinkedIn, and if you're on LinkedIn, go ahead and let us know where you're from, what's going on, and we'll be monitoring that. Curt's going to be hitting the chat here on Remo. If you want to join us on Remo, but you're on LinkedIn now, don't fret. Just go to my profile, and you can click the Remo link in there and get over to see us. Curt Anderson, friend. I don't even know what else you want to say, but it's all good. Take it over, man.
Damon, brother from another mother. So, man, I've been looking forward to this for months. I am so excited, so fired up. This is we have a celebrity in our virtual house today.
Yep.
So guys, on Remo here, drop your LinkedIn connection in there. Happy to have everybody on here. I've dropped Harry Moser's LinkedIn profile. So, guys, a quick introduction on Harry Moser. So, Harry, welcome to our program. I'm going to give a quick little introduction here. I don't think Harry even needs an intro. So Harry Moser is the founder of the Reshoring initiative. He is a rock star celebrity, advocate, ambassador for U.S. manufacturing. So Harry, welcome. Thank you for joining us today. Happy Friday, my friend.
Curt, it's great to be here. You guys have done such a good job promoting this. You've been all over the internet. And you're like an exact example of how to do e-commerce. So it's wonderful. Yeah.
Well, thank you. So for folks that aren't, maybe, I don't know who on earth isn't familiar with Harry, let me give you a quick little background, Damon. I don't know if you know some of these facts here. So Harry is an MIT grad. And Harry, I don't know if you, I applied to MIT and I didn't get in because I spelled it incorrectly. So I spelled it. Yeah. He has an MBA from University of Chicago. He is an amazing, incredible manufacturing career that we're going to dig into. But let me share some of the awards that Harry has won over the years as the ambassador for U.S. manufacturing. So he is he's in the Industry Week Hall of Fame, which is a huge honor. He was Quality Magazine Quality Professional of the Year, I believe, in 2012. He was on President Obama's Reshoring Forum. He won the Manufacturing Leadership Council's Industry Advocacy Award. He's been in Wall Street, Forbes, The New Yorker, USA Today, Fox Business. So Harry is all over the place. Harry, again, I don't know how you do it, but we're so honored to have you today. Thank you.
Thank you, Curt. Now, part of the key is I work almost as hard as those Goldman Sachs people we've been hearing about on the news. Supposedly the new ones, the first 10, 20 years, they work an average of 98 hours a week.
Oh, wow. Well,
can you imagine that? That's a lot.
That's a lot. Well, let's dig in. You've had an amazing, incredible manufacturing career. So before we dig into our program, we're here to talk about reshoring, how critically important it is for our country, our economy, manufacturing. Well, let's go back in time. So you graduate from MIT engineering, you great MBA from University of Chicago. How did you find and I believe you started your first job, it looked like General Electric. Is that where you started?
Yeah, started in the manufacturing management program at GE at the large steam turbine generator in Schenectady.
Wow.
And then shifted out to San Jose, not bad, for nuclear power. Came back and worked at MIT in what's called Industrial Liaison Office, keeping companies up on MIT's technology, and then a variety of companies, but it's almost always in manufacturing, foundry equipment, a great, no longer existing U.S. machine tool company called Acme Cleveland that owned National Acme, like Acme Gridley screw machines,
sure.
And a variety of companies. And eventually I was the president of Rotofinish and then the president of Charmy EDM machines. 5-axis milling machines, which is now George Fisher or GF Machining Solutions. So it's a great career. I had a wonderful time. Love the industry.
Right. So worked relentlessly for years, dedicated yourself to manufacturing, thousands and thousands of jobs that you've had a fingerprint on as far as helping create and establish. And then, of course, you know, most people go into retirement. Maybe they're on I know you're an avid tennis player. You go off and play tennis. You play golf. What do you decide to do? I'm going to roll up my sleeves and start this incredible, wonderful nonprofit called the Reshoring Initiative. How did that come about? Where was the aha where you're like, okay, I'm retiring, and guess what? I'm plunging right in. How did that work out?
Well, I figured it would be easier for me than playing golf. Well, so the background on that, I grew up in New Jersey, Elizabeth, New Jersey, right across the river from New York City. And the biggest thing in town was Singer Sewing Machine. So the main factory for the world, the place where the whole thing got started, was there. And that factory 120 years ago was the largest factory of any kind in the world.
Wow.
It was 2.5 million square feet, 5,000 workers in a day when most places were small. And my grandfather was a foreman. My dad ran about a third of the factory. I worked there summers in high school and college. And I went past 20 years ago, and nothing of Singer's made there anymore. Everything's imported. Everything comes from somewhere, kind of thing. And I cried when I thought what had been lost by the city, the family, the state, country. And during my career selling machine tools, selling foundry equipment, I came across company after company, industry after industry that I wanted to sell something to, and they weren't there, or they were shrinking so fast. And why were they shrinking? Because of the imports. Our industry has declined. The other guys came in, and therefore, since I only sold in North America, there was nobody to sell to. So eventually, when all that was done, I said, I'm retired. Could sit on the beach, but much more fun to bring 5 million manufacturing jobs back.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know what? Right there, virtual applause. We've got.
Yeah, we're not done yet, though. Still got a few more of those to get.
Well, kudos to you. And we have a lot of great friends in the crowd, Ira Bowman and Dan Bigger. You know, we have mutual friendship with Dan Bigger, and you know what an advocate he is for U.S. manufacturing. So what a great emotional story. You know, it hit close to home, close to your heart. Talk about so you start a nonprofit. How, you know, and again, you're in retirement. You're like, I'm rolling up my sleeves. How did that process go?
Well, I was blessed when I was leaving George Fisher that they instead of like they fire me on Friday, you know, we agreed to a 3-year transition like this. I became chairman emeritus, whatever, and so I was able to still have the connection, still be able to travel and make, you know, take advantage of all my contacts, the media, the companies, et cetera, and get the thing started. Yeah. The one complication I had, I started to get some companies or associations that wanted to be sponsors, and they sent me checks, and I said, I've got to incorporate so I can get a bank account so I can cash the checks.
Good problem to have, right?
Yeah, that made sense. Anyway, so we were blessed to have very active support from AMT, the group that puts on IMTS, 130,000 person machine tool show in Chicago. Yep. So AMT, NTMA, National Tooling and Machining Association, PMA, the Swiss Machine Tool Society, of which I happen to be president, and American Foundry Society, you know, groups like that came on board. George Fisher, my old company, they came on board, helped us. You know, sometimes just gave us money, other times asked us to do, you know, articles and presentations and, you know, all kinds of stuff. So just I've been blessed to have the support of all these people in the industry that made it possible.
And just confirmation of the mission and just everything you're behind. And again, we've got some great friends on here like Gail, John. Yeah. Of course, we mentioned Jan Bigger. Val, you're winning my heart. Valerie says Manufacturing Ecommerce Success Workshops are the best part of my Fridays. Val, you're right here. My
No doubt.
Speaking of, Harry, while we're here, while we're doing it, can we show off our T-shirts right now, brother?
Okay, here we go.
Here we go. Manufacturing is cool. So we plan this a little bit. We plan our haircuts. We plan our teeth.
So one of the keys, Curt, on the Manufacturing is Cool T-shirt, anybody who submits on our website or emails me a new reshoring case that we didn't already know about, they get a free Manufacturing is Cool T-shirt made in the U.S. out of U.S. cotton.
That Aaron did. So our friend Aaron in Madison just asked, "Nice, where can we get those?" So there you go. We got to get
either here it is. Find me a case that's already happened, and you get a T-shirt. Let me help you make something significant happen in terms of reshoring, and you get 2 T-shirts.
We want everybody wearing as many T-shirts as possible. Manufacturing is cool. So this is, and Dan says maybe we need to get the USA made manufacturing T-shirt business. Amen. I agree. So Harry, I know we want to dig right into, we want to dig right into the Reshoring Initiative. I think you've got a little presentation that you want to dig into. You want to pull that up?
I think I can tell you a couple of things first before then.
Please.
How about that?
Yep.
So our mission is to balance the trade deficit, eliminate the trade deficit, which would be an increase of 5 million U.S. manufacturing jobs. That's a 40% increase. So imagine all of those who are in manufacturing. Imagine if your business was 40% bigger. Mm-hmm. That's where we'd be if or when we balance the trade deficit. And the reason we have this trade deficit, which has grown from nothing, mm-hmm. we had surplus back until 1980, and it's grown so it now averages about 800 to 900 billion with a B per year. So our imports exceed our exports by 800 to 900 billion. And the reason for that is the U.S. just is not price competitive. Now, we've got good people, they work hard, et cetera, but a combination of the dollar's 20, 30% too high. We don't have the skilled workforce training that, say, the Germans and the Swiss have.
Right.
We don't have a value-added tax to protect our borders for stuff coming in.
Yep.
For years, our corporate income tax was the highest in the world. And so companies, when they made their decision to where should I put the factory, where should I put in the new equipment, where should I train the people, too often it wasn't the U.S., it was somewhere else. And so our data shows that the U.S. is about 15 to 20% higher in FOB price, ex-works price than, say, Germany. Mm-hmm. And we're 40% higher than China, probably 50% higher than India, if the product can be made in India. And so, and companies look at that and they say, I got to go because my competitor is going to go. If I don't go there, I'm out of business. So they go. So it's for the U.S., almost all the other countries have an industrial policy. They say, like you see China, they're going to be good at chips. They're going to be good at military, at solar, at 5G. Name it. All the important things they're working on.
Right. And
the U.S. has just sat fat and sloppy, and just whatever happens, it happens. For laissez-faire, blah blah. And I'm a conservative. I believe in laissez-faire, but when you've allowed the field to be tilted against you, it doesn't work. It doesn't work for us. So we advocate very strongly for the U.S. to have an industrial policy, and we don't think you should pick companies as winners. We think sometimes it makes sense to pick industries. So I think right now chips, solar, electric batteries for cars, so it makes sense. But most important, we should pick not industries, but industry. We should say the U.S. cannot survive unless it has strong manufacturing, and we'll level the playing field by currency, by tax rates, by skilled workforce, by value-added tax, whatever it takes until we've eliminated the trade deficit. Because you can imagine 40% more people working in manufacturing and the rewarding, wonderful career that manufacturing gives, with training opportunities, apprentice programs, credentials, chance to go on, get a bachelor's, master's degree, whatever. And, we see that as the best solution to most of the country's biggest problems. And, unemployment, the opioid crisis, the inner city problems, the pollution, budget deficits. You bring back those 5 million people, and a lot of those problems get a lot smaller. So So we're always advocating to the government to get its act together and make that happen.
That's a fantastic point. And it hasn't happened overnight. It's been a very slow kind of death by 1,000 cuts, or, if you will, watching manufacturing in that decline since 1980. Now, the numbers that I know you just put out an article recently, was it 12 million jobs? Is that what we're looking at in manufacturing currently?
Currently about 12 and a half. Yeah, yes.
And so with that 40%, so let's talk a little bit about trends, favorable trends that you're starting to see. Are we starting to turn the ship around?
Yeah. So now you've got to let me.
Yeah, we'll let you get the stuff shared again.
Figured out how to do it. Okay, share.
Go ahead and hit share.
Application window,
Yeah.
Application, share. There it should be coming up.
Boom. Awesome.
There you go.
How's that? Good. You trained me 3 or 4 times, and I can remember.
That was great. It was great.
Anyway, so this shows the good news. So we track a combination of reshoring by U.S. companies. Think General Motors, for example, or foreign direct investment, FDI, by foreign companies, Toyota, Siemens, something like that. And the total of the two of them in 2010 was about 6,000 jobs. And that got up to 190,000 total in 2017. It was driven by the corporate tax and regulatory reductions. Everything was looking really good. And then we came up with a trade war, and companies got into a condition of business uncertainty. They didn't know what tariff rate was going to apply to what product from what country for how many years. And so they said, well, let's just not invest. Let's wait and see. Let's see how this whole thing plays out. So for 2018, 2019 went down. Still good, still much better than back here, but not as good as here. And then in 2020, foreign direct investment continued down as companies, probably the same thing in other countries. Companies focused on their home market. So you can see this came up here, and actually I've got a later version of this that shows it coming up to about 100,000 reshoring jobs announced last year. So a record for reshoring itself. And that was driven significantly by COVID. So in the cases of reshoring from March of 2020 to the end of the year, about 60% of the cases mentioned COVID as one of the causes. And maybe half of them were directly related. So there's dozens and dozens of companies that have started making masks and gowns and gloves and all that material that we ran out of, that we almost didn't make. We were so dependent on China and others. And then the other half were companies that said, I see what's happened in the medical industry, but we make something else, widgets, electronics, something. And that could happen to us. We can't get our product from China, from somewhere when this goes bad. So why don't we pull back and make more of it here and be self-sufficient and more reliable? So between those two factors, COVID has been obviously a disaster, a horrible thing, but it has accelerated the reshoring trend.
That's you don't realize what a huge vulnerability you have until that vulnerability is in your face, and it just really hit us hard this past year. Realizing that supply chain, and there's been some of us, a lot of us on the call today, and Harry, our mutual friend Lori in Wisconsin. Harry was just on Lori's podcast a week ago. Fantastic interview. Strongly encourage you to check that out, guys. Drop your LinkedIn profile in the chat box. For manufacturers, you work with a lot of manufacturers. You work with a lot of MEPs around the country. So, and for anybody not familiar with the MEPs, that's the Manufacturing Extension Partnerships. Harry, can you talk a little bit about what's your role and what you do with the MEPs? I know you do a lot with IMEC in Illinois, correct?
Correct. They've been the most aggressive. They've had the biggest program. So what Curt's talking about, we offer the total cost of ownership estimator, which companies use to reevaluate their offshoring and see if it makes sense to bring it back by understanding all the costs and risks that most procurement people ignore. And then we offer the import substitution program. So companies can come to us either directly or through an MEP or an economic developer, and the company can say, we're really good at making widgets, whatever it is, shafts, bearings, housing, something. But we're really good at making these. And then we tell them who the biggest importers are of widgets. The biggest importers are of what that company makes really well. And then we identify the company, the importer, where they're located, address, what they're bringing in, what tonnage, roughly what they're paying for it, whom they're buying it from offshore. And then we train the U.S. company, like an Illinois company through IMEC. We train the U.S. company to use total cost to go to that company and convince it that when it shifts and buys from the U.S. company instead, it'll actually be 5, 10, 15% lower cost, lower total cost, even though the FOB price might be higher.
Okay, perfect. And that's fantastic. Lori, thanks. Lori dropped her podcast and her LinkedIn profile. Guys, I just put in Harry's LinkedIn profile and the Reshoring Initiative. So the TCO, you actually have a calculator tool that manufacturers can go on your website and use that calculator, correct?
Correct. And I'm going to take you down one slide. Okay. So anybody who wants to, it's free online. You go to it and sign up, sign in, and you do a calculation. You answer a series of questions, maybe 29 questions about the U.S. source and the foreign source, and it calculates the duty, freight, carrying cost of inventory, travel costs, all kinds of stuff like that, and it makes a huge difference when you do that. So I took the first 180 cases where users compared China to the U.S. So you can see the blue line here is a distribution of those cases. The horizontal axis is the Chinese price as a percentage of the U.S. price. So at 100, they're equal because 2 over 2 is 1, which is 100%. So and the average or the mode of the price ratio is around 70%. So the Chinese price across a whole range of industries is about, on average, 70% of the U.S. price, but not too bad. In 8% of the cases, the Chinese price was higher than ours, so because the ratio was above 100%. But 8% isn't very much. But when you take the same cases and you look at the TCO, at the total cost of ownership, the 8% goes up to 32%. And if there happens to be a 15% Trump tariff in place, then it goes up to 46%. So just by doing the math correctly, by recognizing all the costs, all the risks that are relevant, the percentage of the work that makes sense to come back to the U.S. and be done here more profitably goes from 8% to 32 or even to 46%. So we if I meet somebody, he says, well, what's the opportunity? I say, maybe 20 or 30% of what you're importing, you'd be more profitable if you brought back either in your own factory or outsourced to a machine shop, a foundry, somebody on the outside.
Yeah. That is so, wow. This is just so powerful. What great information. And it's really, there's a little bit, black and white as far as numbers and cents go, but there's also an emotional, again, we realized the vulnerability this past year. And when you start breaking down these numbers, we're starting to see like, hey, there's incredible opportunities bringing products back here. Are there certain industries, say like with the chips, circuit boards, all the little parts that, capacitors, diodes, all those things, we've lost all that. Are there certain industries that you feel that should be coming back sooner than later?
If you go to our website, or when you go to our website, and look under, there's a blue bar at the top, resources, recent data, 2019 data report. It'll have 2020 there pretty soon. And you open that up and you'll see that, excuse me, that we actually show the number of jobs coming back in each major industry. And automotive has been number one. Excuse me again. So automotive has been number one. And I think number two is electronics, and then maybe appliances, and maybe chemicals, and then machinery, something like that. Chemicals driven significantly by fracking, because the shale gas gave us a cost advantage in chemicals, far offsetting the little bit of labor that you have at a refinery. So that tells you what is coming back. We would say, in general, that things that come back would have the following characteristics. Let's say the freight cost is high relative to the labor content. So perhaps the demand is volatile. It's either very seasonal, like Christmas shopping kind of thing, or it's just unpredictable. And therefore, there's a significant advantage to having a local source instead of an offshore source that takes maybe 2 or 3 months to replenish supply. Yeah. So we've identified a series of characteristics like that of the product. Intellectual property. If you're worried about having your intellectual property stolen, China's probably not your first choice. U.S. would be a good choice.
We could have a whole session just on intellectual property.
Yeah.
Just the threat of losing. Dan Bigger just chimed in. Intellectual property is a huge one, and that's a constant threat. And Dan also said, he could use a class on how to use your tool more effectively. And I think it's just such powerful results, powerful answer for folks that are just so adamant. Well, I have to go abroad. What would you go ahead, Dana?
I've got one thing to add here that I think that, especially when we're talking about manufacturing and e-commerce and the demand, is that when you have a local source or a source that's closer to you, that's not the 2-3 month lead time, you can react so much faster to customer demand and not have these large chunks of inventory that you've committed to that's in transit, in production, ready to go. And I mean, in Dan's industry in injection molding is a great example. You look at a pure cost basis for small plastic parts. Those things can, there's cheaper places in the world to do it. But when you put the cost of transport, the cost of the order sizes you've got to do, you cannot react to customer demand. And if your customer demand is changing, this onshoring of your production gives you a better advantage. And that's really some of the things that I've seen that even in projects that some of the latest project I worked on with some very, 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 very large companies, where it was a combination of offshore sourced and onshore sourced just because of that very fact. So that we just covered a little bit of it, but it really makes a big difference in the U.S. consumers' desire to get what they want when they want it.
Let me comment on two things that came up in the last couple of minutes. First, I think Dan said he'd like to learn more about TCO. If you go to our website, again, the blue bar at the top, I think it's videos, drop down the menu, and there's maybe it's news. You drop down the menu to videos, and there's 1 or 2 webinars, 1 hour free webinars, just solely on TCO, how to use it. Takes you on the website, takes you around, gives you ideas on how to get started. Enough to be dangerous. And if you need help, then you email me and you call me. Another thing, I think Curt mentioned printed circuit boards. So my favorite case of reshoring is a company called Moser Corp. They're a large printed circuit board populator. They make the complete finished board and other products from that, and outside of Chicago. And they came to me about 5 years ago. They were about to lose a big order. A Chinese competitor had come in with a lower price. And so I worked with Tony, the VP sales. I helped him do the TCO calculation. He showed the customer that even though Moser's price was higher, the total cost for the customer was lower. And I have a quote from Tony saying that was key to winning a $60 million order.
Round of applause.
Yep. Good stuff.
Well, and I just want to chime in real quick. There's for manufacturers out there that are maybe facing that, or you've been hit negatively with imports, and that's unfortunately a vast majority of U.S. manufacturers, if not all in some capacity. There is an agency that is a federal agency called TAAC, TAAC, and I believe it's Trade Agreement
Trade
Adjustment Agreement Center.
Trade Adjustment Assistance Center.
Well, I butchered that one, didn't I? So TAAC, and they're spread out throughout the country. I think they're in regions like here in New York. It covers New York, New Jersey, Midwest.
I think there's 5 of them. Yeah.
So if you are a manufacturer or you're a marketer working with manufacturers, check out the TAAC program in your area. And what it is, it's federal funds that help manufacturers. It's a grant. I don't want to get too deep. I want to take away from Harry's time, but just check that out. So Harry, let's dig into.
Let me, Curt, just let me clarify on that. The TAACs are helpful, but they are reactive. In other words, they only come in place when a company has lost orders because of imports. Right. Okay. Whereas I've tried to get them to become proactive, so that when a company is thinking of laying off people and building a factory in China, instead the TAAC would help them understand total cost, so they wouldn't do that, or would help them take advantage of our import substitution program. So it's a good program. It would be a better program if it was proactive instead of just reactive.
And you're making a great point. It's almost like putting a Band-Aid on the injury after the injury happened. So great, fantastic point. Let's talk a little bit about what can companies be doing on their end to help us make ourselves more competitive. Okay.
I differentiate between the OEMs and the supply chain companies, the people who sell to the OEMs. And some companies are obviously both. But first thing, you use total cost. Stop deciding on the basis of just price, but look at all the costs, all the risks that are involved. And if you do that, again, 20-30% of what you offshore, you'll decide to bring back. We set priorities. For example, we recommend priorities. First priority: if anything that is not now offshored, don't offshore it without doing TCO, because once you get it off there, it's relatively harder to bring it back. A second would be bring back work that you've outsourced offshore. In other words, you're having a contract, a foundry in China do it, or Turkey, and bring it back to one here. Doesn't cost you very much because it's not your building over there. Third would be you've got your own facility in that other country, and maybe it's making 50% of its output for the U.S., 50% for the local market like Asia. Repurpose it over 5 years and have it make 90% for Asia, and put your incremental investments in the U.S. to take up for that supply. And the toughest thing is to shut the factory over there and build one here. I know most people aren't going to do that, so that's the least likely, the lowest ROI priority. So there's things like that you can do. If you're trying to pick work in a company and decide what to reshore, look at the products that cause pain. So walk around, talk to the people, talk to quality, and say, where are you having quality issues with offshored product? You talk to inventory control. Where are you stocking out? Or sales, where are you stocking out? Or inventory, where do you have too much? Work your way through the various departments in the company and look for allies who will help you eliminate the pain that they have. So a lot of this is to avoid silos, because the procurement people tend to be maximizing their bonuses by cutting price rather than maximizing profitability by reducing total costs.
And you have a nice testament here from Pierre saying, I've utilized the TCO spreadsheets to evaluate several components for reshoring a couple years ago. Excellent tool to drive data-driven decision versus opinion. Boy, what a great response. And that's the thing, is like, we trying to change that mindset of like, cheaper is better. Being so focused on, quote, what the bottom line is. Damon's bringing up supply chain, what we've encountered this past year. So many intellectual property. Dan brought up language barriers, so many benefits. So, Harry, here's a big question for you. Who was President Harry Moser of the United States? What changes would you be making on a broader scale? Like, what are things that the country overall that we could be doing on our little show as we're trying to be ambassadors? Dan would vote for you. I would definitely vote for him. So what are steps that you recommend that as a country that we could be doing to help ourselves be more competitive?
No, I'd reverse those things that I talked about in the beginning. I would get the dollar down by 20 or 30%. I wouldn't do it in one day because it would be too disruptive, but over 5 years maybe. But Treasurer Yellen has said, no, we want a strong dollar. Well, she's wrong, and Biden's wrong on that. I would shift a third of what we spend now on student loans and turn them into apprentice loans. Right now, maybe 3%, 5% of our high school kids go into apprenticeships. In Germany and Switzerland, it's 60%. So I'd get I'd probably a third of the kids that go away to college now instead would be going into apprenticeships, and they'd be given the data that shows them that in most cases is going to be a more profitable career for them than having a lot of student debt and working in Starbucks, which happens too often to too many of them. I'd have a value-added tax like all the other countries do, which makes imports more expensive. Undoubtedly more spent. I'd keep the corporate tax rate at 21%, not have it go back up to 28%. Some more spending on innovation. Pick certain industries. I don't like picking industries, but I think you have to do it now because it's gone too far with chips and solar and electric batteries and rare earth minerals and things like that. That we can't let ourselves be dropped from the race, and so we have to subsidize those areas. But if we do the things I said first, if we level the playing field, then the amount of subsidy you have to give to the chip factory or to the electric vehicle batteries comes down dramatically because their cost difference relative to offshore has come down dramatically.
Yep.
Fantastic question. So you have a big fan out here, Gail, our dear friend Gail. She's talking about your podcast with Lori. So guys, if you get a chance, check out Lori's podcast. I think she put that link in the chat box. It's a wonderful interview that Harry just did recently. So Harry, man, time just flies, man.
It does.
10 after 2 Eastern time. So Harry, our program is, we call it Manufacturing Ecommerce Success. So what reshoring in e-commerce, where do you see synergies or where are there opportunities for manufacturers on both there?
Yeah, in a very strange way, at first it was almost negative because until recently, or maybe still true, Chinese companies can ship products like through the mail to U.S. customers cheaper than U.S. companies in the U.S. ship them to U.S. customers. So some kind of a strange agreement our postal service had. So that we were actually, you might say, subsidizing Chinese e-commerce into the United States. And I think that's being handled. But in general, as a general rule, when you, like I think was pointed out before, with e-commerce, everybody expects quick delivery, and you need immediate replenishment of the distribution center, and you cannot get that by surface freight from China or from anywhere outside North America, and therefore that gives an advantage to the local supplier. So I'd say that e-commerce helps reshoring, and in many ways, reshoring helps e-commerce because e-commerce, one of the key advantages I think of e-commerce is customization, is producing a product, the one-off that's unique, like a pair of running shoes for Harry with Harry on it or something like that. And that's tough to do from way offshore, but it's relatively easy to do from a local factory. So to me, e-commerce supports reshoring. Reshoring supports e-commerce. A great future for both.
Music in my ears. I couldn't agree with you more, Harry. And so anybody who comes to these shows or anybody that's willing to listen to me preach, that word customization is just so critical. Yeah. And as I've been kind of pounding the pavement or beating the drum for the past 10 years or so, trying to help manufacturers, that's my preach has always been when you can get manufacturer direct to that end user, not necessarily the consumer. And now with Amazon, now you can get closer to that consumer. with Amazon. But when you said configurator, our dear friend Kevin's on the program today with Gen Alpha, a great company in Wisconsin, cutting edge software. They do configurators. And Damon and I are preaching to anybody and everybody that's willing to do a configurator. Jeffrey Stern's on the call today. We just helped him with a configurator just last week. And when somebody can land on your website and now can customize that product, what a great competitive advantage for U.S. manufacturers. So
Curt, I just pulled up one slide. This is a very good friend of mine, Greg Owens, and he and Matt bought out the Oneida flatware, the stainless steel flatware factory up in New York State. And he tried to compete against China, et cetera, couldn't. He just couldn't get the cost low enough to sell through retail. And instead, he's selling almost exclusively direct. And because he's cut out that 50% or whatever that the middleman and the retailer take, he can sell a better product made in USA at a price that's competitive with the Chinese product in the retail stores. So now this doesn't work for everybody. You're not going to sell steel this way probably, but for many things, selling direct, selling e-commerce can make you efficient enough to make U.S. manufacturing possible.
I couldn't. That's our preach every week, man. That's e-commerce just opens up so many opportunities for the manufacturers. And again, I know, and we talk a lot about contract manufacturers where they're like, man, we don't have a proprietary product or that finished good. What do we do? But they have proprietary processes, and there's great opportunities there. So, Harry, what I want to do, I want to be mindful and respectful. I want everybody to get a chance. Everybody's trying to talk to you at the tables, get a little one-on-one, little Harry time. So, Harry, as we wrap up, first off, thank you, my friend. Thank you for what you're doing for our country. Thank you for what you're doing with Pounding the Pavement for Reshoring. You have a lot of fans. You have a lot of people supporting you. And I feel there's a lot of momentum. We had a young man, Mike Womack, who I think is a mutual friend with the New Jersey MEP. He was on our program a few weeks ago, 27 years old, and he's just so fired up for manufacturing. I feel that there's a lot of momentum coming in. We always like to close out our program with this question. So our dear friend Allison DeFord says, she always preaches, how do we help our clients, how do we help our customers be the hero of their story? How are you, and you've kind of answered this for the past half hour, 45 minutes, how are you out there helping your customers, your clients, your manufacturers being the hero of the story? I'm asking you that right now.
Well, the best way is we give them an opportunity to tell their stories. If they report it to us, like they can get the shirt.
T-shirt. That's right.
and we'll promote it on our website. We can, if a company has a couple of good stories, we'll do an article for Industry Week and get them, national fame so they can sell more. We love to make them the focus of what's happening.
Right. And just bottom line, what it does for the community. So our friend Ray, Lori, Kevin, John, Gene, everybody, Jake, thank you guys. Jeffrey, your friend Gail, thank you guys for being here on Remo. Everybody on LinkedIn, thank you so much. Harry, God bless you, dude. You're just such an inspiration to go into retirement and to build this wonderful nonprofit, such an admirable cause. You have a lot of fans, a lot of love, a lot of support going out there for you. So thank you, my friend.
You're so kind. But it's the support of people like you, knowledgeable, enthusiastic people like you that make it worth getting up every day and fighting the fight and looking for another 100,000 jobs.
Nice. Thanks so much.
Hey, real quick, Damon, I met Brian this morning. So Brian's on the call today. Aaron, of course, my dear friend of Madison. AJ is with us. Ira was on earlier. Still on. So guys, thank you. I tell you, I just want to close on this. We goof around. We have a great time. We can't thank you guys enough for joining us every week. We are just so enthusiastic. We just really, like with what Harry just said for the past half hour, we're just so relentlessly trying to drive U.S. manufacturing. So we really appreciate you taking the time to join us every week. So thank you.
Yes. And thank you all of you that were joining us on LinkedIn Live. Appreciate the comments. We had tons of good interaction there today as well. But yeah, we are here to help manufacturers in the U.S. Really understand their opportunities. And Harry, just a great example today. So we're dropping off a LinkedIn Live. We're going back to the tables on Remo to talk to Harry. But thanks everyone for joining us.
Have a and
Everybody.
Back to the floor we go.